So you're thinking about getting one of those government jobs where you're driving for like the city, the county, or the state, and that, in my opinion, is always the best way to go. At some point, I think every driver should look into that because that's where a lot of your stability come from. As a driver, a lot of times you look online and you look at drivers and they start saying stuff like they've been driving for 45 years and 50 years and stuff like that. That's crazy to think about. I'm like, man, you drive for 40 years, 50 years? Where's your retirement? Like, what's going on? Like, that can't be the plan. Well, a lot of times it's because of, they didn't have anything really set aside. They didn't have no plan, maybe no pension, no 401k. They didn't really do anything to set themselves up. Or perhaps they did. They just really enjoy driving. Some people just, they don't want to just be sitting at home, and I understand that. But the thing about it is, when you work for the city, county, or state, they'll have retirement programs already established for you. You don't sign in for it. It's just automatically given to you. And you start contributing as soon as you start working. And then they have other programs similar to 401k that you could take advantage of. And that, at least give you some type of idea. Hold on. That'll give you at least some type of idea on, when you're going to retire, as opposed to just working and working and working, and hoping that you can find you a good company, you're bouncing from company to company. That get tiresome after a while. So it's always a good job or a good idea to look into a government job. The only thing about it is, the process is long. It's a long, drawn-out process that could take, anywhere from a few months. A few months, I mean, like 6 to 8 months at minimum, to about 2.5 years total from the time you fill out the application to the time they establish the list. And usually the way it'll work is, first you have to, look at, what you want to do. Whatever city, state, or county, go on their website, look to see what driving jobs they have, or what, a lot of times, you have the sanitation, they may have a water and power. They may have some type of street services, some type of public works department. Looking at that, that's where a lot of the driving jobs are. And see what, first you could look and see what the pay is. Now, when you see the pay, understand that that may be excluding overtime. And then it's also a possibility that they gotten a raise and they just didn't update it on the site. So just because if you see a wage and you're like, oh man, that ain't no money, that don't necessarily mean that they don't make good money there. So I would always suggest go ahead on and apply and go through the process, see it to the end, and then find out. Or if you know anybody that work for these departments, or if you see them out on the street, stop and ask them about it. If they, what the job is like, and if there's a lot of overtime and whatnot. And a lot of times they'll tell you, if it's a good move or not. So that's one thing. And then once you figure out what you want to do, apply. I would say whatever city or state, county you want to work for, periodically check on their website, and see what they hiring for. A lot of times it'll just pop up. And when it does, you apply for it, and go through make sure you read the full job posting so that you can make sure that you know how to apply. Because sometimes the job posting have special instructions. Maybe they want you to attach a resume when you submit your application. Maybe a lot of times they want you to submit a copy of your driver license and your driving record. So always read the full description before you apply. I know people that applied where I am, and there was some things they didn't include because they didn't read everything, and then now they're upset because they didn't get chose for the testing process. So always make sure you read everything and then you respond the way you're supposed to. And so usually after the application process, there's a screening process. So you fill out the application, and then the human resources, they'll scan all, go through all the applicants and see who qualify, who don't. Then once you do, then they'll send you an email and let you know what the next phase is. So you'll have a testing process. Now that screening process could take a couple months, and then it might be a month or two from the time you got the letter or the email saying that that there's a test date. And then you get your test date, you go to the test date, you pass that, and then there's another process. There's another waiting period. It may be a couple weeks, couple months before you find your results for the next phase, which might be the interview, or maybe it's a skills test. Usually it's probably the skills test right after the written. And then, because they give you a written exam. So written exam could consist of, a lot of times it's stuff that's on the DMV report, plus some other stuff. So, it's suggested to, brush up on your reading comprehension and math and stuff like that. Map reading, I would say that's something to think about. Go online and see what type of tests you can do for maps, or what type of reading comprehension, and brush up on your math and stuff. So it'll be a combination of different stuff like that, right? And so once you get to the skills test, then of course it's going to be, all your DMV stuff. Really know how to do your practice on your brake tests, brake inspection, JACOLA. Make sure you know how to do all that and everything. And then once you pass that, then it's probably or usually the interview. And then once you do the interview, there's another process. And then after you finish the interview part, then now you're waiting for your placement on the list. So it's like 3 or 4 phases before you can even make an actual list, before you know that you have an actual chance of getting a job. So after the application process, then there's the skills test. The written test, skills test, and then an interview. And then usually after that, then there's some type of there's a waiting period where you gotta wait to your placement on the list. That may be another few months. So just between the application process and the actual placement, finding out where you place on the list, that could take about 6 months to a year, right? And so then once the list is established, that list is usually good for 2 years. So within that time, there's going to be processes where you can, where depending on your score, let's say you get a letter for for the next phase. Maybe it might be another interview, right? Or what can happen is the other phase could be you do the written skills test, and then that's where you placed on the list. And then the next phase will be you get called in for an interview. All right, it could also go like that, where the interview could be after your placement, and then you'll get an interview once they start pulling names. And so once you do that, once they call you again or send you an email again to see if you're available for the job, and see if you're still interested. Who knows how long that's going to take? Like I said, the list is, and it's all depending on a couple factors: how many spots they want to hire for that position, and where you place that at on the list. So, you may not hear anything for a while. Then if you do, you respond, and you'll interview again, or they may just send you a message saying, okay, now it's time for your background. They may send you a background packet, and then based on your background and everything, then you'll get selected. So it could be a lengthy process, man. And so it's not something that you would want to necessarily assume you're going to just get a government job that easy. But it is possible if that's what you want to do, and depending on how bad you want to go that route. If they're hiring for a bunch of positions, let's say they may have, 15 driver spots. Maybe they may be budgeted for 5. So they'll interview maybe 10 people and then select 5 from that 10. And so you may or may not get selected, right? So you might, let's say you don't get selected, and then you'll get a letter back saying that you didn't qualify. Well, always remember, or you didn't get selected that go round. Always remember that that list is good for 2 years. So just because you got that letter of rejection that one time don't mean that you're not going to have opportunity for that same job again within those 2 years. So, stay encouraged and keep trying, because sometimes you'll get in right away. Sometimes you won't. It just really depends on the need. And usually there's always multiple departments within the city, county, or state that's looking for a driving job. Sometimes you just want to get in. All right? Sometimes you just want to get in the city. You get in however it is you can. Now, let me tell you something about this job that I had, the position I got. I'm with sanitation, right? I tried this about 13 years ago. I came in as a part-timer, but I was trying to do full-time, and so I did it. A friend of mine talked me into it. I did it. I liked it, and so I'm like, yeah, this would be cool to do full-time. I took the test, and even though I was there, I did a good job, but I didn't get in right away for whatever reason. So I was a little bummed. I was kind of bummed out about that for a little bit. But years later, I decided to take a test for parking enforcement. And so I got in after about 2 years, almost 2 years on the list. I took the test, I passed it, and I didn't hear nothing for a long time. And I totally forgot. And I'm working over at Saya, and everything is good, and then I get an email talking about they got want to know if I'm still interested in it. I'm like, well, okay. At first I wasn't, but I was, had some things going on in my life where, that change was necessary. So I decided to go ahead on and leave Saya and do parking enforcement. So I'm away from driving for about 2 years. And then they they started hiring for sanitation again, a sanitation driver. I'm like, okay, went for it. And then what happens when you already a city employee is see, let's go back to the testing process. When you take a test, and you do a list and you finish the testing process, they have a list of people of open competitive, which is people on the outside, and then they have a list of promotionals, which is people that already work for the city or the agency or county, whatever. When you are already in, you're not competing with everybody else on the outside, so that limits your amount of competition that you got to deal with. Even though it's written in the laws that if you score, anybody that scores higher on the outside, that could still put them above somebody that's on the inside based on the test scores. But so they do that to create a level of fairness. Because otherwise, why would anybody apply if people if they just want to give it to people that's already there? Which happens sometimes. But usually when that happens, it's because of the person scored higher. But you're not. But if you're already in the city or in the agency, then you're not competing with everybody else on the outside. So when I took the test, I was on the promotional list instead of open competitive. And so you do have certain rights to the job, with the exception that the person on the outside don't have a higher score than you, is how it's written. But I ended up getting in about a year after I tested in. Now there were some people that came in on the outside that they came in before me. So there's some people that have more seniority than me in terms of yard seniority. They have more seniority than me coming in, because they came in before me, even though I was already with the city. They was already at this yard. But because I was at the city longer, I get first dibs over them on like scheduled vacations and stuff like that, and promotions within. But yeah, well, I'm not sure about promotions within, but I know with vacations, I get more seniority, or I get first dibs on the vacations than they do. But so I said all that to say that you can still get in the city. Like, let's say if there's a job that you really, really want and they're not hiring yet, just try to get in if you can. So say like it's some people, they're electricians. They drive trucks, but they also are electricians. Maybe you want to get in as an electrician and and start there, apply there. Maybe you a security guard, a janitor. It could be anything that you can apply for, that you can qualify for right now. Go knock it out and try to get in, and then you can transfer. You can always transfer. They also have transfers for a lot of these places where you don't have to go take another written test. You can just transfer to it as if it's open for a transfer. You know what I mean? So there's ways, to get in the city or the county or state or whatever. The only thing that sucks about like the state of California is that they get paid once a month. So you got to budget your money right, because if you don't, oh my gosh, you're gonna have a long month ahead of you. You get all your money in one lump sum, but still. Yeah, so that's pretty much it, man. So these city jobs are good too, because not only do it give you protection from, or give you retirement, it also civil service protection for your job, so they can't just fire you. You can still get fired now. That's a myth with these working for the city is that, or the county or whatever, is that you can't get fired. No, you can. Do something real stupid, you can. But they just have to work a little harder to do it. If they're trying to get rid of you, you have to do something really, really dumb. But as long as you don't do nothing too stupid, they're not gonna fire you. And even if you do something stupid, there's usually some type of union protection, which also means that it's gonna be people fighting for you to get some more money, in better working conditions. So that's a benefit. I'm not a pro-union person. I'm not anti-union. I'm not pro-union, but because unions can be great, but they can also hide bad employees. But for the most part, everybody are pretty good workers, and they come and they do their job, and it's pretty good. Now, the only thing is sometimes, like if you into a lot of overtime, sometimes some departments don't have a lot of overtime, and some do. You can't run from it, So it just depends on what you want. But it's always a good thing because you come to work and you don't have to worry about some of the stuff that you have to worry about when you work in a company job. So it's a good plan. So if you had a good place, or if you had a job and you want to try something different, then that's something that you can do. I remember when I used to be on the road, man, and I was sometimes thinking to myself, man, I love this job, I love this route that I'm on, but man, what could I do? What could I do different? And man, is there a city job or something I could do? And I just started kind of looking. I would look for every now and then to see what's up. So anyway, that's pretty much it. So again, make that. I would strongly suggest making that a plan, an action to get it moved from a company job to a city job, especially in this climate, because you just never know what's going on. And the other thing with these city jobs is that there's opportunities to move different departments and ladder over. There's opportunities for you to become a supervisor should you choose to. There's so many things that you can do when you get with an agency. You don't have to feel stuck. All right, so that's pretty much it. So you guys be easy.